The call came in late, and I stared at the screen, debating whether to let it ring through to voicemail until morning. Something told me to pick up, and what followed was a detailed breakdown of 9 everyday foods about to become much harder to find. The man on the other end was a longtime distribution coordinator named Mike, who oversees inventory flow into major retail chains across the country. For over 2 decades, he has tracked what moves fast, what stalls, and what gets quietly restricted before any public announcement surfaces. He gave me the early warning on egg purchasing limits weeks before store signs went up in early 2025. He alerted me to cereal pullbacks months before General Mills addressed them openly. Each time, the households that moved quickly avoided the scramble. On this call, he had a physical paper in front of him containing 9 items. Caps have already been entered into backend systems. No shelf signs exist yet, but the restrictions are live. I wrote everything down as he spoke. Here's exactly what he shared. Starting with the first item, ground beef. When Mike mentioned ground beef, I pushed back immediately and told him everyone already knows beef costs a fortune. What new angle could possibly exist here? He paused and said I understood the sticker shock but had no visibility on the next wave. The deeper reality sits in the herd numbers. USDA data places the American cattle herd at 86.2 million head as of January 2026, a figure not seen this low since 1951. 3/4 of a century of ranching tradition compressed by 8 consecutive drought years across the Great Plains and Southwest. Ranchers liquidated breeding stock simply to stay afloat during those dry seasons, and breeding animals require multiple years to replace. The beef cow herd specifically has contracted to 27.6 million head, the smallest since 1961. Bureau of Labor Statistics tracking shows ground beef hit $6.70 per pound in December 2025. That represents a 72% climb since 2020. Not a gradual drift upward, but a 72% surge. The USDA Economic Research Service now forecasts beef and veal prices advancing another 12.1% during 2026. No stabilization, no easing, just further pressure. Mike spelled out what he observes every day inside his distribution network. High-volume retail locations are seeing per-package weight caps loaded into the backend system for ground beef ahead of July 4th grilling demand. Signs are absent, but the enforcement mechanism sits ready. When seasonal demand collides with constrained national supply, the cap activates before anyone prints a notice for shoppers. A relative of mine named Greg phoned me a few weeks back. He purchases the 80/20 tubes at Walmart religiously every week. On his most recent visits, he noticed the beef pork blend prominently displayed while pure ground beef options sat diminished and pushed toward the back. Shrugged it off initially. After I relayed what Mike described, he returned and inspected more carefully. The number of pure ground beef offerings had shrunk noticeably from what he remembered seeing months prior. The blend was masking the gap. Current pricing sits at $6.70 per pound and climbing. Layer July 4th demand onto ongoing herd contraction, and USDA models indicate meaningful upward pressure pushing through the $7 range by late summer. Buy now and freeze. Aim for 3 to 5 pounds per person in your household. Not a panic response, just strategic positioning. There is a real distinction between the two, and if ground beef caught your attention, the second item will genuinely stop you. Mike told me this is the one everyone believes is resolved, and he firmly disagrees. Eggs. I said to Mike that we already endured the egg crisis, it ended, and we moved on. He offered no immediate reply, just silence on the line. Then I pulled up the current data myself, and the reason for his hesitation became painfully clear. During the 2025 outbreak, prices peaked at $6.23 per dozen in March. 50 million egg-laying birds were culled due to highly pathogenic avian influenza. By mid-2025, flock rebuilding efforts accelerated and prices collapsed. By early 2026, a dozen eggs at Walmart hovered around $1.97. The collective exhale was audible. Crisis resolved, except the resolution was merely a pause. By January 2026, fresh HPAI outbreaks triggered renewed culling across multiple states. A single Colorado facility housing 1.3 million layer hens was hit. Simultaneously, new cases emerged in Europe, particularly within the Netherlands, disrupting global export patterns and pushing international buyers back into open markets from two directions at once, tightening availability worldwide. The USDA acknowledged reduced projected layer inventories heading into spring 2026. Here is the systemic reality everyone needs to understand. Current USDA policy mandates that when a single bird tests positive for HPAI on any farm, every bird on that property must be euthanized. The facility then remains empty for a minimum of 28 days before restocking can begin. After that, new pullets require 5 to 6 months before achieving productive laying capacity. This timeline is biological, not negotiable. No amount of consumer demand can compress it. Mike said he is observing the same early allocation signals he tracked in late 2024. Diminished replenishment frequency in distribution zones near elevated HPAI proximity. Quantity caps on 60-count cartons at Walmart are confirmed active within the online system. He told me the question is no longer whether the cycle repeats, but when. My neighbor Sarah navigated the full 2025 shortage with 5 family members depending on her. She admitted afterward that she regretted not stocking up during the window when prices normalized. Right now, prices are normalized again. That exact window she referenced is open at this moment. Walmart pricing sits around $1.97 per dozen. Should HPAI escalate through summer, which the USDA has not ruled out, prices can catapult back toward $4 to $6 per dozen within a matter of weeks. That is not speculation. It is exactly what occurred twice in recent memory. Maintain a rotating supply covering 2 to 3 weeks. Oldest cartons positioned forward. That is not hoarding behavior. That is Sarah wishing she had acted when the opportunity existed. Number 3 is an item Mike raised himself without any prompting from me. He said people believe they grasp this situation fully, yet they are missing the current chapter entirely. Ground coffee. Coffee feels permanent, abundant on every shelf and in every format imaginable. It ranks among the most globally distributed consumer goods on earth. I questioned Mike on this one, asking what could possibly be developing with coffee that remains hidden from public view. He responded that I understood last year's headlines but had no awareness of what is unfolding with the harvest at this very moment. Brazil supplies roughly 40% of the global coffee market. The nation endured its most extreme drought in recorded history through 2024 and into 2025. Arabica futures, representing the beans found on most American grocery shelves, reached $3.48 per pound on the Intercontinental Exchange in January 2025, a 79% year-over-year increase. Retail coffee pricing within U.S. stores climbed 41% year-over-year, based on Bureau of Labor Statistics figures. Maxwell House ground Colombian coffee at Walmart alone jumped 46% during 2025. Then the United States applied a 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee imports in July 2025. Brazilian coffee flow into American ports dropped nearly 53% year over year that September. ICE certified Arabica inventory stocks fell to a 2.25-year low. Those numbers are not historical footnotes. They are the price floor supporting current costs. Mike added a detail I had completely missed. As of this week, harvest progress across Brazil's primary growing regions trails last year's pace and sits beneath the 5-year average, according to tracking firms Safras and Mercado. Rainfall is interrupting field activities. A delayed harvest means delayed supply arriving at American ports. Meanwhile, the Japan Meteorological Agency confirmed an El Niño weather pattern developing, introducing additional risk for Brazil's upcoming crop cycle. NOAA places the probability of a significant El Niño event at 67%. That is the unfolding development most consumers are not monitoring. The 2025 price shock is recognized history. The 2026 harvest disruption is active and current. Mike stated that 2-bag online quantity caps are already present in backend systems for premium ground coffee and K-cup variety packs across major retail accounts. No signs posted, no announcements made, just back-end quantity flags. A neighbor named Gloria purchases the large Folgers canister every other week without exception. I shared Mike's information and the BLS figures with her, and she initially laughed it off. I asked her to consider that Maxwell House at her local Walmart rose 46% in a single year. The laughter stopped and she picked up 3 canisters on her drive home. Current pricing ranges from $10 to $18 per bag or canister at Walmart, depending on brand and format. With active harvest delays and unresolved tariff pressure, another upward move carries higher probability than meaningful relief. Purchase 2 to 4 weeks beyond your typical supply level. Store contents in airtight containers shielded from light and heat. The price secured today is the cost avoided when September arrives. Number 4 is where my pushback was strongest until Mike delivered one number that silenced me completely. Fresh tomatoes. I challenged him directly, questioning how tomatoes could possibly rank this high on a list of concerning foods. He told me to examine the year-over-year figure first and then revisit my skepticism. Fresh tomato prices have risen 23% year over year as of April 2026 per Bureau of Labor Statistics CPI data. In March 2026 alone, tomato prices increased 15% within a single month. That represents the highest pricing threshold in 8 years. Cal Poly agribusiness professor Ricky Volpe communicated directly to CNBC that additional pain sits on the horizon, not relief. I verified that number twice, 39,007% above April 2025 levels, according to USDAAMS. That is not a misprint. Multiple forces converge simultaneously to generate this situation. The United States imports approximately 70% of its tomato supply, with Mexico accounting for roughly 90% of those imports. In July 2025, the U.S. terminated the tomato suspension agreement with Mexico and reinstated a 17.09% anti-dumping duty on fresh Mexican tomatoes. Then Florida, the largest domestic fresh tomato producer, absorbed multiple winter freezes and storms from December 2025 through January 2026, obliterating the spring transition supply window. Mexico's own crops simultaneously encountered weather complications and disease pressure that suppressed yields below normal levels. The USDA Foreign Agricultural Service projected Mexico's 2026 tomato production down 9% from 2025, with exports declining to 1.8 million metric tons. On top of all this, diesel fuel costs surged over 50% following the Iran conflict per AAA tracking. Tomatoes rank among the most transportation-sensitive items in the entire produce supply chain. Higher diesel translates directly into higher per truck costs, and those costs land squarely on the price tag. One produce buyer informed CNN that he was receiving merely an eighth of his normal tomato supply across all suppliers combined. Mike confirmed internal produce quantity advisories are being flagged ahead of July 4th demand season at high volume retail locations. Not rigid limits yet, but soft caps that convert to hard restrictions the instant summer grilling demand spikes and supply fails to respond. My neighbor Rob oversees the produce budget for a restaurant supply operation. He disclosed that a month ago, he paid $25 for a 25-pound box of tomatoes. The month prior, that identical box cost under $10. In 20 years of produce purchasing, he had never witnessed a single month movement of that magnitude. He has now begun pre-buying canned Roma and diced varieties as a hedge for autumn menu planning. Current retail pricing hovers around $2.25 per pound, an 8-year peak. Multiple agricultural economists on record indicate additional strain ahead. Stock canned tomatoes now as a buffer, Roma dice, and whole processed domestically, largely insulated from the fresh tomato tariff. This becomes your fallback when the fresh shelf appears sparse. Number 5 forced me to pause and sit with the implications longer than any other item because of what it signifies beyond cooking alone. Cooking oil. No one thinks about cooking oil until it vanishes, and when it does, everything requiring it becomes problematic simultaneously, which encompasses nearly anything prepared from scratch. The FAO vegetable oil price index climbed 5.9% in a single month during April 2026, reaching its highest point since July 2022. Oilseed prices registered 9.1% above year-earlier levels during that same period. The U.S. tariff on European olive oil currently stands at 20%, up from 5% before 2025. Italy, Spain, and Greece collectively produce 95% of U.S. olive oil imports. That tariff does not diminish because Spanish production recovered. It layers directly onto every bottle crossing the Atlantic. Canola oil, the most widely utilized cooking oil in American home kitchens, confronts its own distinct pressure. Canada functions as the world's dominant canola exporter. U.S.-Canada trade friction through 2026 has introduced genuine logistical and cost burdens on Canadian canola imports. Reynolds Wrap confirmed in supplier communications that Canadian aluminum imports face a 50% tariff, the identical trade climate applying cost pressure across Canadian agricultural exports broadly. Then there exists the biofuel factor that most consumers have never encountered. U.S. soybean oil demand from the domestic biofuel sector has been steadily climbing, confirmed by USDA data as of June 2026, pushing soybean oil prices to their highest level since 2022 and widening the premium over South American pricing. When biofuel production absorbs soybean oil, diminished supply remains available for kitchen use. That equation is straightforward arithmetic. Gallon-sized cooking oils spanning canola, vegetable, and soybean blends are registering 2-unit online quantity limits within Mike's backend system ahead of the summer canning season. Gallon containers consistently become the first size capped because they embody the highest per unit stockpile value. That is the indicator Mike watches for initially. My neighbor Terry cans extensively, consuming 3 gallons of canola monthly during peak canning season. When I communicated what Mike revealed alongside the FAO figures, she rearranged her schedule that same afternoon and purchased the next 6 weeks of supply in a single trip. She stated plainly that she absorbed her lesson in 2022 and refuses to repeat that experience. Current pricing ranges from $6 to $10 per gallon at Walmart, depending on oil type. Summer canning demand combined with biofuel draw and import tariff pressure generates the conditions for a meaningful price movement during the back half of 2026. I want to say something directly before advancing to number 6 because Mike articulated it during that phone conversation and it carries weight. He acknowledged that he could be interpreting some signals incorrectly. Distribution data does not function as a crystal ball. Trade situations can shift. A supplier might step in. A tariff could be rolled back. These outcomes are possible. He refused to pretend otherwise. Then he added something immediately afterward that I keep revisiting. He stated that what he knows with certainty is that every single item on this list costs more today than it did 12 months prior, and absolutely nothing in the data he examines points toward relief. Even if his specific timing proves imperfect, the directional trend is not mistaken. That is the element I keep returning to. Purchasing now remains the correct call, regardless of whether Mike's precise limit timing lands exactly as described. Number 6 represents what Mike calls the most misunderstood item on the entire list. People treat it as the dependable fallback option, but the fallback now carries its own set of complications. Canned goods. Canned goods are supposed to occupy the safety zone, the backup, the thing perpetually available when fresh alternatives grow complicated. Here is the reality most consumers do not recognize. Canned goods necessitate metal cans. The American Action Form confirmed directly from can manufacturers that all steel tariff exclusions are scheduled to fully expire. Manufacturers are already anticipating price increases reaching store shelves through 2026 and extending into 2027. Furthermore, current U.S. domestic capacity falls short of producing the tin plate required for food cans. That statement comes directly from industry representatives on record, not from speculation. Consider where existing can supply actually flows. Institutional contracts with school districts, correctional facilities, and military commissaries command absolute priority over retail allocation. When a manufacturer operates under constrained capacity, retail shelves thin substantially before those institutional contracts experience any impact. The commercial buyer receives service first, and the grocery aisle receives whatever remains. The USDA indicates processed fruit and vegetable prices trending upward for 2026. Canned tomatoes already register approximately 6% higher year over year per CPI data. That figure climbs further as tariff pass-through fully materializes through 2027. Mike said reorder volumes on canned chicken, canned tomatoes, and certain soups are declining across his network. Shelves appear visibly thinner midweek before restocking occurs. My neighbor Tom visited on a Tuesday seeking cream of chicken soup and discovered half the brand options absent. He assumed it was a simple delivery gap. After I shared what Mike described, he returned Thursday following restocking. Conditions had improved, but still fell short of what he consistently observed 6 months prior. The variety is contracting. Current pricing spans 70 cents to $1.50 per can, with tariff pass-through arriving in full and institutional supply claiming priority. Those prices will advance from this point forward. Assemble a mixed case now, 50 to 75 cans incorporating soups with genuine protein content, canned vegetables, and diced tomatoes. Purchase only what your household will actually consume. A stockpile you actively rotate constitutes an asset, while one you neglect becomes a liability. Number 7 prompted an audible shift in Mike's voice during our conversation. Peanut butter. I questioned him on this selection, pointing out that peanut butter occupies every store shelf in every size and brand configuration imaginable. He told me to examine what the southeastern peanut belt has endured and then repeat my objection. U.S. peanut production dropped roughly 13% in a recent crop cycle, reaching its smallest yield since 2006 based on USDA production data. Hot, dry conditions across Georgia and Alabama struck yields severely. Farmers transitioned acreage toward more profitable crops when peanut pricing lagged behind alternatives. Fewer planted acres combined with drought conditions equals tighter supply, even while shelves still project an appearance of fullness. The mechanism most people overlook operates as follows. Peanut butter manufacturers maintain long-term contracts that limit the retail price they can charge consumers. When production expenses escalate and supply contracts, manufacturers redirect available product toward commercial food service channels where pricing flexibility exists. Retail allocation then receives trimming. This mirrors the identical pattern Mike described across multiple items on this list. No widespread shortage exists at this moment, and multiple industry sources have confirmed this point. However, every one of those same sources flagged an identical caveat. The market is highly vulnerable. Adverse weather across the southeast or in Argentina could tighten conditions rapidly. Very little buffer exists to absorb another disruption. Mike reports that 40-ounce and 64-ounce family-size jars now display a 2-unit online quantity limit within his backend system. Not the small jars, but specifically the bulk sizes families reach for when they decide to stock up. My friend Dale parents 3 children and depletes a full jar weekly. He purchased 6 jars within 2 days of our conversation. His wife contacted me afterward and expressed gratitude, noting that Dale rarely listens to anyone's advice. Current pricing ranges from $3.50 to $5 per jar. In 2011, a single southeastern drought drove peanut butter prices upward over 21% within one season, according to USDA historical records. The conditions that enabled that event are present once again. Purchase 15 to 20 jars now and store them upside down to prevent oil separation. Unopened peanut butter maintains quality for over 2 years. Number 8 is an item I have tracked for months, and Mike supplied the final piece I needed. Olive oil. Spain and Italy together produce roughly 70% of the world's olive oil supply. Consecutive droughts devastated both nations during 2023 and 2024. Spain recovered somewhat during the 2024 to 2025 season. Prices eased, and the public assumed the story had concluded. It has not concluded. Portugal's olive harvest declined 20% in late 2025. Italy's competition authority now actively investigates supply chain pricing pressures. Greek producers seek new export markets specifically due to U.S. tariff uncertainty. The tariff itself, 20% on imported olive oil, elevated from 5% before 2025, does not evaporate simply because Spain experienced a better growing year. It layers directly onto every bottle crossing the Atlantic Ocean. The IMF global olive oil price as of June 2026 sits at $6,198 per metric ton, according to St. Louis Federal Reserve Fed data. $6,000 per metric ton for a cooking oil, a commodity that endured a structural crisis and never fully returned to prior levels. at $12 to $20 per bottle at retail. Premium extra virgin olive oil now occupies a price point where urban CVS and Walgreens locations have already transitioned to locked display cases. When a retailer secures an item behind a lock, they are communicating precisely what the theft data reveals about its value. Mike indicated that 16-ounce and larger extra virgin olive oil bottles are showing 2-unit online quantity limits across major retail accounts. He is monitoring whether that restriction migrates to in-store limits through the summer season. My neighbor Linda prepares Mediterranean cuisine almost exclusively, consuming a bottle and a half every 2 weeks. When I presented the IMF data alongside the 20% tariff information, she offered no resistance. She purchased 4 bottles the following day and stated she cannot dispute that arithmetic. Current Walmart pricing ranges from $12 to $20. With a 20% tariff embedded atop a fragile European supply foundation, prices will advance higher before any downward movement materializes. Secure 2 to 3 bottles now and store them in a cool, dark cabinet. The price differential between purchasing today and purchasing in 3 months could reach $10 per bottle. Number 9 is the item Mike introduced himself without any prompting from me: cereal. In December 2025, General Mills reported a 20% decline in adjusted operating profit year over year. The CEO confirmed during the earnings call that the company is making active determinations regarding which products to continue manufacturing, not temporary pauses, but permanent discontinuations. Honey Nut Cheerios, Medley Crunch eliminated. Chocolate Peanut Butter Cheerios eliminated. 18-ounce family packages of Honey Nut Cheerios Minis eliminated. All confirmed through General Mills' own public earnings disclosures. What drives these decisions? Wheat, corn, and rice all absorbed climate-related impacts during recent growing seasons. Minnesota production operates at reduced capacity. Gallup polling confirmed 12% of U.S. adults utilize GLP-1 weight medications as of late 2025, shifting dietary patterns away from grain-based foods and toward protein. Demand contracting while production simultaneously constrains yields. One outcome: permanent SKU removal. Mike flagged this as a different category of limitation, not a per-customer purchase restriction, but a permanent deletion from the replenishment system. He explained that once a SKU drops from the reorder list, it never returns. The shelf button produces nothing after that point. My neighbor Tom drives 20 minutes every other week specifically for his preferred Honey Nut Cheerios variety. He does not yet realize it has been discontinued. That conversation will prove difficult if your household consumes a specific cereal regularly, particularly a specialty flavor or family size format. Inspect your shelf availability this week. Reduced present serves as the only warning you will receive. Most cereals maintain quality for 6 to 8 months when stored in cool, dry conditions. Now, let us address precisely what actions to take, structured and affordable, with zero panic involved. This week, focus on 3 items. Ground beef, purchase and freeze 3 to 5 pounds per person in your household. Cooking oil, acquire 2-gallon-size units of canola or vegetable oil, while online limits remain confined to digital platforms and have not yet reached in-store caps. Peanut butter, secure 10 to 15 family-sized jars this week or next. During the next 2 weeks, address 3 additional items. Coffee, construct a supply extending 4 weeks beyond your normal rotation cycle. Eggs, sustain a 2 to 3 week rotating buffer given the renewed HPAI activity documented in early 2026. Canned goods assemble a mixed case of 50 to 75 cans spanning soups and vegetables, prioritizing protein-containing soup varieties. During weeks 3 and 4, close the remaining gaps. Olive oil, obtain 2 to 3 bottles while open shelf access persists. Tomatoes, pivot toward canned Roma and dice varieties as a price hedge against fresh tomato pressure, continuing through summer. Cereal, identify your household's regular brand and format. Evaluate current shelf availability and purchase a 6 to 8-week buffer if signs of reduction appear evident. A storage principle applies to every item on this list: cool, dark, and dry conditions. Write the purchase date on every package using a permanent marker. Position newest items to the back and oldest items to the front. Photograph your pantry before every shopping trip, a 10-second habit that eliminates duplicate purchases or overlooked gaps. Budget reality check. A 60-day buffer spanning all 9 categories requires most households between $150 and $250, distributed across 4 weeks of normal shopping trips. That equates to 1 or 2 additional targeted items per trip, not a special emergency run, not a budget crisis, merely a slightly more deliberate version of the shopping you intended to perform anyway. Here's the honest truth before I close this out. Mike could be mistaken on some elements of timing. Trade agreements shift, weather patterns surprise, a new supplier enters the market. These developments occur regularly. I would rather state that openly than pretend otherwise. However, here is what sits beyond prediction and within documented fact. Ground beef prices stand at $6.70 per pound, with USDA projections indicating another 12.1% increase. Tomatoes elevated 23% year over year. Coffee retail pricing up 41%. Olive oil positioned beneath a 20% tariff with zero resolution visible. Eggs disrupted once again before full recovery was complete. Canned goods confronting tariff pass-through extending through 2026 and into 2027. Cereal SK-US permanently discontinued according to General Mills' own earnings call statements. Every single one of those data points is sourced, and every single one is current. Buying now represents smarter positioning than buying later. That holds true even if Mike's timing proves off by 6 weeks. The price paid today sits lower than the price awaiting you in autumn. The households that maintained stocked pantries during the 2025 egg crisis did not appear foolish. They appeared steady and prepared. That is precisely what this conversation aims to achieve. No panic, just positioning. Drop a comment sharing which of these 9 items surprised you most. Share this video with one person in your family, just one, so they can prepare alongside you. If you found this breakdown valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more practical preparedness insights delivered regularly.